Hey y'all, it's Dim here, and I'm back again with another video. This time I thought I'd share my top 20 most wanted and least wanted matchups for Death Battle. Um, I'm gonna basically be splitting it up into four categories. The first one are gonna be the connections, as in what the characters have in common. The second one is gonna be the stop, how fair it is, or the debate potential, which is not gonna really matter that much. It's probably not gonna matter at all, but it's worth bringing it in there. The third one is gonna be, well, the animation potential, how would the characters react with their different abilities. And the fourth one is just gonna be my interest in the matchup in general. And I'll go ahead and discuss why the matchup sucks or is cool, and I'll discuss their alternative options. But with that said, let's go. So let's end the video on a positive note. We're gonna start with my top 20 least wanted. And to start it off, we have a really weird one, but I don't entirely hate it. It's Chica versus the Cookie Monster. And it is worth noting that none of these thumbnails are mine, and obviously go to their respective creators. But this is a weird matchup, and I'm more negative about it, but I don't know if I should hate it or love it, ironically. The connections are mainly just they both eat a certain type of food, with Chica eating pizza and Cookie Monster eating cookies, and that's really about it. The debate potential, I guess, is kinda interesting, but nothing spectacular. It's generally agreed upon that Cookie Monster wins this. The animation potential is fine. I mean, I don't think Cookie Monster has any fun abilities by any chance. And I'm not sure what Chica has either, so I don't have much to say about that. And I'm just generally not that interested in the matchup. And as for the alternatives, I really got nothing for Cookie Monster. He's opponentless. And for Chica, just have her be with the animatronics. It doesn't really matter which matchup it is, as long as it's a good matchup with the animatronics. Now for number 19, we have Deku versus Mike Wazowski, Composite. Let's start off with the connections. These two apparently have a lot in common, with both of them just sort of being made fun of at first, but then end up going to this academy where, where they meet somebody who doesn't really like them and is sort of their rival, but they end up achieving their dreams. I don't know if Deku has, and ended up befriending said enemies. Bakugo and Sully, but we'll get to them later. Um, the debatability is actually really close. The animation potential, people saying it's really great, but I'm not personally interested in it. But here's the real reason why it's on my least wanted list. It's just really boring. Like, as a joke matchup, yeah, it has pretty good connections and stuff like that, but it's such a. I just have no interest in them doing this whatsoever. But as for the alternatives, we'll just get to Mike Wazowski's later. But for Deku, he should just find Miles Morales. They have they have they also have good connections. The animation potential is interesting. I'm pretty sure that's not a stomp. Yeah. For number 18, we have Movie Mario versus Movie Sonic. Even after seeing the Mario movie, I still do not like this matchup. The connections are just the movie versus the Mario with Sonic, and yet that's really about it. The animation, no, the debate. I'm pretty sure movie Sonic wins this as he has more feats and stuff like that. And it's just not interesting in general. The animation potential is just whatever. Like, movie Mario's power-ups just really consist of the mushroom, the Tanuki suit, the Kasu, and he doesn't really use the fire flower, but that's really about it. And it's just boring as like a Sonic versus Mario matchup. And and if you just want to have a movie Mario, movie Sonic matchup, then do the 1993 version, which would probably be more interesting. But yeah, unless Illumination Mario gets like some crazy new beast in a sequel, I just don't end up liking this. For number 17, we have Bakugo versus Sully. Oh wow, I told y'all that we were gonna get to them later. It's shocking, they're in the same placement. How nice. The connections I'm pretty sure are just enemies that sort of hated the student that was made fun of, and they ended up befriending them. The debate, I don't know who wins this. I'm pretty sure this is also like the composite versions as well. So I got really nothing to say there. The animation potential is also fine, I guess. Really don't know what to say on it. But the real reason yet again is that it's just worse Deku versus Mai, which is already uninteresting to begin with. It just feels like it's trying to get a rise out of people again. Because if you read the Reddit post or the Death Battle Discord, or no, just Death Battle Reddit, then you know that like Deku versus Mike caused a lot of controversy, and this just sort of came after, and just sort of feels lazy, a lazy matchup. That's really all I have to say. For number 16, we have Freddy Krueger versus Eric Cartman. Yeah, this is when the matchup's starting to get real bad. I don't really have much to say on it. It's just that, well, Freddy and Eric have nothing in common. Freddy absolutely stops Cartman to the ground, I'm pretty sure. Animation potential isn't good at all. And, oh, wait a minute. I guess I forgot to talk about the olds for 18 and 17 real quick. So for movie Mario, I got no idea. For movie Sonic, it should probably just be Detective Pikachu. For Bakugo, I guess Yang. I don't really care for it. And for Sully, it should just be Glam Rock Freddy. Now, anyways, back to this matchup. Yeah, it was so boring that I took like quite a bit of time to talk about other matchups. But yeah. But for their alternatives, Eric Cartman has either Master Shake or Porky. And honestly, pick your poison, they're both really good matchups. But for Freddy Krueger, you should probably just buy Springtrap or Pennywise, since those are like way better thematically and animation potential wise. But yeah, bad matchup. For number 15, we have Smash Bracket Mario versus Death Battle Vergil. Oh, I'm sorry. It's just that the matchup is boring. It's a real snooze, as a joke MU. The connections are just that they are both characters from Versus series that were put at wall level and are considered the worst research a part of both shows. The animation potential, no, the debate. Debate potential is here heard that Vergil stomps Mario. Animation wise, it's also a snore because if you're going off what they gave them, then you're really limiting their arsenals, and it's just not interesting at all. And it's just so boring as well. I really don't know what else to say. It has to be one of the most boring matchups I have ever seen, and I cannot just stop repeating that. For 14, we have Baldi versus Bendy. Ay, 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 ay. Okay, let's just go through the connections. They are both indie horror characters. And that's about it. That's all you need to hear. Those are all of the connections. The fight potential is... No, the debate. Sorry, I just skipped the debate because it's so obvious who wins. Who do you think wins between a literal ink demon and a math teacher? I'll let you decide. The animation potential just doesn't work as well. Baldi just really only attached to this ruler, and Bendy just create all these ink demons. I guess you can have Baldi fight off of them. That's really as much as it goes in terms of interesting. And it has to be one of the most soulless matchups I heard. But as for alternatives for both, well, I guess we'll just have to see for those as well, for both. For 13, we have Mario versus Optimus Prime. Yeah, this is really bad territory now. Even worse than before. Let's go over the connections. They are both wear red and blue. In terms of the debate, well then, Mario just absolutely destroys Optimus. Gets up to like solar system level stuff. Animation potential is also a snore. And it's just, once again, one of the most soulless matchups I've seen. Optimus Prime, I'm not sure who he would fight. Mario is just better off fighting Mickey or Link if he were to return. But yeah, that's all I have to say on this garbage. For number 12, we have Cuphead versus Pac Man. One of the most confusing matchups here, if I'm being honest. Let's go over the connections. Okay, those are all of the connections. Pac Man is can just get up to city block level if you're not including the show. It gets up to planet level when you're including the show. Cuphead only gets up to like building or moon level, but that's just, I guess, pulling strength, not his other stats overall. Animation potential is just nope. It's just really bad. Pac Man at best just eats Cuphead's attacks, which is probably more interesting than Cuphead versus Mario, but not really by much. And that's really all I have to say about it. Cuphead should just fight Hackett, and Pac Man should just go ahead and fight a different opponent I will talk about later. At 11, we have Shadow versus Wolf. Once again, this is just an extremely boring matchup. They are just both alter egos of Fox and Sonic, and that's about it. The big potential just isn't even fair. Shadow absolutely destroys Wolf. Animation potential, I guess I'm not really that interested in. And it's just so uninteresting as well. It's already a worse version of a mediocre matchup, Fox versus Sonic. But at least we were proven with that matchup that it could actually be pretty good when done right. But not with this one though. For number 10, we have Sans versus Saitama. And it was almost too easy putting a Sans matchup on here. The connections are just one, with Sans being defeated in one hit, and Saitama only needing one hit. As you could tell, this is a terrible joke matchup, and there's really not much that needs to be explained here. Sans should just fight the judge, and Saitama should just fight, I guess, Captain Underpants if he were to return. For number 9, we have Flowey versus Chef Saltbaker. This is a great example of a matchup that just has connections and nothing else. They both just want to take your soul to go ahead and achieve a certain level of power. Those are really only the connections I know, and I guess it's pretty good, but everything else just isn't. Flowey absolutely destroys Saltbaker to the ground, not even a contest. I don't see how Flowey's attacks mesh well with Saltbaker, and they just have better alternatives. Flowey should just go ahead and fight Chica's Rainbow or Dementio, and Saltbaker should just fight Jack Horner. For number 8, we have Steve versus the Peashooter. Where to begin? Okay, here are the connections. Now here's the big potential. Steve. Okay, so here's how the animation potential. Steve occasionally blocks Peashooter's attacks. Steve attacks Peashooter with his bow or sword up front. Steve has a rather boring arsenal if you want him to match Peashooter. Steve has the Terrarian. Why, in God's name, would you not want to put Steve against the Terrarian? Peashooter should just fight Red. That's way more interesting. Moving on. For number 7, we have Luigi versus Shadow. Shadow, you couldn't stay off of this list. You had to appear yet again with your worst matchup yet. Okay, well, the connections don't even make sense. Shadow's not even Sonic's sidekick to begin with. The big potential, I don't know who wins, honestly. The fight potential is just a snore. It's a really uninteresting matchup, and I don't know why it's so popular when it's so bad. Shadow should just fight Zero if he's gonna return for a 4th time. And Luigi, I'll get to his matchup later. For number 6, we have SMG for Mario versus Sonic.Exe. Connections. Animate debate potential. Mario. Fight potential. Really bad. Like, really, really bad. Like, I don't know how they would play off of each other well. I'm very bored of this matchup. Mario should just go ahead and fight Devil Artemis Kermit or the stupid Sonic from like Sonic Zombies or whatever it's called. Sonic.Exe should just go and fight Red or Ear Sans. Moving on. Oh Christ, go back. Elsa versus Katara. Let's just the connections are only just ice, and that's really about it. Katara does end up winning this matchup. I guess you could say compared to the others, this matchup doesn't have the worst animation potential. But at the same time, I'm not really interested in it either. Elsa should just fight Jack Frost, and Katara just literally any other for good matchups. Why would you put her against Elsa? Moving on. Elmo versus the Annoying Orange. I did see this on like a wiki for Death Battle, so it technically does count, I guess. These two have nothing in common. It's pretty insulting to have Elmo put up against the Annoying Orange, since the Annoying Orange's entire character is that he's annoying, and Elmo, while some may see him as annoying, that's not the point of his character. Annoying Orange stomps Elmo, at least I'm pretty sure. Animation potential's not interesting. Elmo, I'll just get to him later. An Annoying Orange should just fight either Fred for the Legacy, SMG for or just SMG for Mario. Moving on. Peter Griffin versus Freddy Fazbear. The connections. The debate is actually pretty close, actually, so I don't know who wins. The fight is really boring, since probably Freddy and Peter are just gonna be punching each other, with maybe Freddy throwing an occasional microphone or pizza. That's probably really stretching it. I mean, it's a really, really bad joke matchup. Freddy should just fight Frankenstein's monster, and Peter Griffin should just fight Homer. For number 2, we have Shrek versus Wario. They don't have anything in common. It's pretty insulting to even put Shrek against Wario, since Shrek isn't even like greedy. Debate doesn't even exist. I think if you look at these two, you could clearly tell that Wario wins. And if you don't, then I will personally hunt you down. The animation potential is just awful. And anybody who has a decent brain knows why that is. Shrek should just fight Manny or Sully. And Wario should just fight literally any of his good opponents. Like, literally any of them. Why put him against Shrek? Y'all ready for number 1. This is your last chance. 3, 2, 1. It's Darth Vader versus Springtrap. Yes, this is an actual matchup that exists. And yes, it is just as awful as you are thinking. While I could put Springtrap against his other laughably bad joke matchup, I decided to do this one. Let's go over their connections. Darth Vader wins. The animation potential is just why they don't fight mesh together well. Darth Vader is more of a sword user, while Springtrap would probably be more upfront. I mean, Darth Vader should really just fight Obito, and Springtrap should really just fight, I guess, Freddy Krueger, or Junko, or any of his good matchups. But hey, enough of that negativity. Let's go ahead and go into my top 20 favorite matchups. Let's do it. So for number 20, we have Donkey Kong vs. Crash Bandicoot. Well, I don't exactly know the connections, and I'm pretty sure Donkey Kong takes this with ease. This seems like a ton of goofy, stupid fun. These two mesh together pretty well. You can have DK and Crash go ahead and shoot each other with their coconuts and, well, wombos thingies. Since they both ride cars, maybe you could have a section with that as well. And it's just really interesting. I don't know any other, like, interesting DK MUs they would use. But with Crash, I heard of, like, Stitch or Rayman. And those are good alternatives. But DK would probably be the best one for just a general returning matchup. But not much else to say. For 19, we have Catacris vs. Scoot The Woz. Hey! Never mind. The connections I'm pretty sure are just sort of YouTubers that go on wacky journeys, and it's sort of Nintendo versus PlayStation. Yeah, I really vibe with this. Catacris absolutely stomps with being able to turn to Jesus Christ himself. I'm not even joking. I'm not sure how the fight would go, but I imagine things get very wonky, and the interactions would just be golden. As for their alternatives, I heard, like, I'm not sure if there are any for Caddy Daddy, but for Scott, I think the only one I remember is the Angry Video Game Nerd. And why would you do that for AVGN? You should just have him fight the Nostalgia Critic. But for Scott, I don't really care for that. For number 18, we have Bart Simpson versus Nate Fry. These two are just sort of both troublemakers at their schools that make sure that their principals stay miserable forever. But in the end, they do sort of have a bit of heart and do care for their friends and their family. Yeah, this is probably my favorite for both. And I know a lot of people like Greg versus Nate, but my argument to that is how would that be different from Bart versus Nate when Bart versus Nate just does it better? I mean, they could have the same setup and they're both sort of getting into a school fight. They could both start with like a crowd cheering, fight, 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 fight. You could have them go all around the school to fight, have them get on skateboards, have Bart use a slingshot and use whatever Nate's ability is. And besides, it's not as much of a stomp. Although I hear Bart does win. As for their alternatives, like I said, I heard for Greg for Nate. and I guess that's also good, if slightly worse, for just not being that fair. And for Barker, Eric Cartman, and that's a good old, but I don't think it's as interesting as name. For 17, we have the Sonic Battle Royale, including classic, modern, movie, boom, and X. Um, yeah, this is. I don't want to say that this is my preferred for the Sonics, but it's interchangeable with their objective best matchups. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed this matchup. All the Sonics have unique abilities, and they aren't just the exact same. Cough, cough, Link Battle Royale. Cough, cough. Um, yeah, they could have some very awesome interactions. As I bet they'd be confused and probably, I guess, have since they could all like be slightly different personalities. But yeah, I really like it. For classic, his interchangeable is classic Mega Man. For Sonic is obviously Mario. Uh, Detective Pikachu for movie Sonic. The Pac Man from the show for Boom, and then whatever Sonic.Exe matchups exist. For 16, we have Squidward versus Eustace. The connections between these two are mostly grumpy neighbors that don't like the main character, and they play a certain instrument horribly, but do end up showing some heart in the end. Um, yeah, it's really good. The interactions would just be golden. I would love if at least Squidward tries to show a bit of heart and maybe not try to hurt Eustace, but Eustace, or however you pronounce it, just wants to get rid of the stupid squid because I guess he slightly annoyed him. I guess that could play off well, and yeah, it's pretty neat. I'm pretty sure I hear that Squidward wins this. And as for their ults, Squidward versus Mesa is just kinda overrated and not interesting. I haven't heard any interesting alternatives for Eustace. For 15, we have a good Elmo matchup. We have Elmo versus Kermit the Frog. The connections are two Muppet characters who sort of stayed in the background at first, but sort of end up taking over their show. They are both kind-hearted individuals who aren't afraid to go into dark topics. I hear the animation and interactions would be very neat, and some might say that, how would these two fight? Well, I think it's sort of maybe because of Elmo, sort of because he loses his patience and gets rather angry. Kermit sort of tries to calm him down, but they end up fighting anyways. And that, yeah. For the debatability potential, no, the debate, it's actually pretty close, or depending on what you believe for both, as apparently if you give Kermit Star Wars stuff, yes, I'm serious, apparently he wins. Well, without it, then Elmo actually has a good chance of taking it. Because apparently he's like way faster. Yeah. For number 14, we have Oswald the Lucky Rabbit versus Mighty the Armadillo. The connections between these two are that they are both sort of I don't know actually what the connections are, but it just sort of seems like a really neat matchup to me, and that's pretty much all I have to say on it, really. But yeah, I do like it. And I do hear that Oswald wins. I haven't heard any interesting alts for Mighty. I heard of Felix and Game & Watch for Oswald. Those are good alternatives, but just not as interesting as Mighty. For number 13, we have Ghostface versus the Imposter. Trust me, this matchup somehow actually works. The connections between these two are that they're both sword characters who go ahead and try to act innocent around their quote-unquote friends, and then they usually try to kill them in a sneaky way, and the victims have to figure out who's the one that's killing them all, and they end up defeating them in the end. Um, yeah, I I think I mainly like it for the connections, but the animation potential and interactions could also be neat, as maybe Ghostface would sort of be a little surprised by the imposter and what he can do. Or maybe you could get sort of all meta about it, like in Scream 6. I don't know. I think the imposter takes this. Ghostface is definitely tough to take down, but if there's one area that he's weak at, it's the head. And the imposter always loves going for the head. It's like he has some sort of head fetish. But yeah, it's pretty good. For Ghostface, I heard the Fisherman from. That's probably my favorite alternative, but I couldn't tell you really why I think it's better than the Imposter. Or, no, worse. But I don't know. And for the Imposter, there's obviously the Thing, which is also my favorite alternative. However, I think this one is a little more unique to him. For number 12, we have Larry Boy versus Super Grover. The connections between these two are that they are both sort of parodies of DC superheroes from children's TV shows, that being Batman for Larry Boy and Superman for Super Grover. Although in 2.0 he seems to be more like Batman. Um, yeah, I think that the animation potential is really awesome. This vibes really well. I'm not sure who wins. I did a voting poll and y'all thought that Larry Boy would take it, but I don't really know who does. As I also heard that if you could buy 1 and 2.0, that Super Grover might take it. So I really got no idea. What do you mean I'm biased with Sesame Street? Because they potentially get 3 wins with all 3 characters. Y'all are ridiculous. Anyways, for number 11, we have good matchups for both Luigi and Pac Man, which is, well, obviously Luigi versus Pac Man. The connections between these two are mainly ghost hunters from the 80s, or I guess Luigi never got to ghost hunting until the 2000s, but I don't really care. This fight is awesome. Well, it's not exactly a fair fight per se, as Luigi does win pretty easily. The theming would just be great. You can either just sort of have an arcadey feel to it, which wouldn't fit Luigi the worst, and would fit very well for Pac-Man. Or you can have sort of a dark atmosphere similar to Luigi's Mansion. The animation potential is just great, as you could just sort of have these two like have so many interesting things. Like maybe you could have a clone fight with the mini Pac Mans and like the double cherry and then the mini mushroom. Maybe a bit of a sky fight, since I saw an animation for Pac Man that he can apparently, I guess, fly. And like the raccoon Tanuki suit or the super cape. You can have a giant fight as these two grow in size. There's so much you can do. Now, as for their alternatives, there's Shaggy for Luigi, but I've already gone in depth with that in another video, so there's really not much more to say here. And Mugman is just kind of a boring matchup for Luigi. And the FNAF animatronics are a good alternative. For Pac-Man, I heard of Bomberman and Felix the Cat. I mean, those work as well. But, once again, this matchup goes into the fact that both sort of have goals. And that's what I really like about it. As they sort of go into specific traits that not a lot of their other MUs do. Now we're in the top 10, and we have Peacock versus FNAF. I don't really know why I have this in the top 10, but I do really like it, and I think it's the best for both. I'm pretty sure the connections are that these are two, two people who sort of act as their regular and kind-hearted selves until something horrible happens, and that just sort of changed their entire personality, and they go after somebody, I believe. I don't know what to say about the animation potential though, but I think it could be pretty neat. It's a stop in Spinell's favor, I think. If you want to scale her to Steven Universe, which isn't exactly a high level, says she could go on with him, and she's probably way stronger in stats. I don't know any alts for Spinell, and for Peacock I heard it Cuphead, but which is also good. But once again, this matchup goes into more specific traits, which is something I like. For number 9, we have DW versus Caillou. They're both mainly two annoying brats. I don't know why I put this on here. I just thought that this was a really funny joke matchup, and that's really about it. For number 8, we have Schizo versus Bendy. These are two mainly, I guess, killer cartoon characters, but I don't care. I think that this could have a really dark atmosphere as well. I'm pretty sure Schizo wins this. For alternatives, there's Cuphead for Bendy, which I don't really care for. Both have Cartoon Cat, which I don't really care for. There's Tricky for Schizo, which is fine, but guess what? I don't really care for it. I think these two would probably bounce off each other the best. And it is a Schizo W, so I guess that's pretty neat. For number 7, we have Mike Wazowski versus Judy Hopps. These two are both characters who just sort of who want to achieve a certain dream, but they're neglected about it. So they go ahead and train for their entire lives, and then they end up going to a university of where they sort of meet somebody that they constantly have to take care of or be the head leader of. But they do end up getting the said dreams, or kinda Mike's case. But yeah, these are really good connections. Don't know how the fight would go, but the interactions would just be great. It's a Mike Wazowski W. Um, for alternatives, I got like nothing for Judy. I think there's like Dogman, but just why? And for Mike Wazowski, there's no point in talking about Deku because he does not exist. There is no Mike versus Deku with Bossing Say. For number 6, we have Golden Freddy versus Needle Mouse. These are both two little girls whose lives were ruined by their murderers, so they ended up taking the form of a popular mascot at the time and create their own hell to torture said killers. These two have really good connections as well. The fight would be like amazing. It's amazing. It's apparently a Golden Freddy W. As for alternatives, I think the only one I can think of for both is Ben Drown. And that's alright for both. But I think together, these two are like a more interesting pair. Sorry if I'm rushing through this too so much. This is nearly an hour long. For number 5, we have Billy versus Dash of the Incredibles. The connections between these two are that they are both super young speedsters of a group of families that, and they both want end up running the track at one point, but are neglected to do. Sorry, but are neglected to do so. Yeah, that's pretty cool. The animation potential is just amazing. They could have more of a race fight. I want Dash to be confused about Billy's idiocy. And as for the winner, sadly it's Billy. He just has like better speed feats that end up outrunning Dash alone. And that's just with speed alone. Don't get me started on his other stats. Um, these two really have no other alternatives. For number 4, there is SpongeBob versus Ronald McDonald. The connections between these two are mainly yellow characters that go ahead and work at a restaurant, the Krusty Krab and McDonald's, and are usually happy at, and there's usually somebody who tries stealing their themes, the Batty Burglar and Plankton. Yeah, pretty solid connections, pretty cool animation potential. It's very close, but I hear that SpongeBob ends up winning. And as for alternatives, I could really give two cahoots about the Burger King for Ronald McDonald or Pepsi Man either. I guess Cole Sanders is fine. And as for SpongeBob, I hear a Gumball, and that's like an underrated matchup, but I don't really care for it that much. There's Shouter, and that's also fine, and the rest of his matchups are fine. Let's just move on. For number 3, we have Happy Happy versus Baldi. This is for the best for both. Do not debate me on that. The connections between these two are that they are both teachers that sort of end up teaching their students at first, and they seem normal up until they try ending up killing them at the end. Yeah, very good connections. I, I hear that Baldi ends up winning, for the fight. I guess it could also be pretty neat. And as for alternatives, I got nothing for Happy Happy, But for Baldi, there's Octodad, which is my favorite alternative, but not nearly as interesting as Appy. And for all of their other indie horror matchups for him, I just hate. For number two, we have Garfield versus Snoopy. The connections between these two are mainly just lazy animals with sort of like, with their owner just being absolutely miserable, John and Charlie, who end up both wanting to go ahead and get a girl, the little red haired girl with Liz, and they do occasionally try to help her with that on points, but mainly just go on their own fantasies. But yeah, don't really have much else to say on it. It's a Garfield stomp, but I don't really care for that. And yeah. Now for my most wanted, we have, oh crap, we have The Grinch versus Jack Skellington. Um, this is just outright amazing in practically every way. The connections may be basic, with them both just being characters who end up stealing Christmas, but end up returning it in the end. But for it's not connections that help this matchup, not at all. For it's the interactions you see, that's the point of it all. That doesn't rhyme. But yeah, these interactions would just be outright amazing since these two both steal Christmas, but for very different reasons. I could see them clashing, with Jack just being absolutely shocked at what the Grinch is doing. And then, obviously, near the end of the fight, you sort of have the Grinch realize what he's doing is wrong, and that and he ends up liking Christmas, and then his heart grows 3 times large, yada yada yada. And then obviously this would end up being a mercy death as well. As for the winner, it's actually really close, and you can sort of see most people here say that Jack wins, but other people also like arguing that the Grinch wins, so I don't really know. I don't know any other alternatives for either. But yeah, that's just my extremely long video about my most and least wanted matchups. I hope y'all have a good day, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.